While the leadership of North and South Korea are potentially moving towards peace, or at least getting a little bit closer, the family of Otto Warmbier is also moving closer to something, that is their lawsuit targeting North Korea. The lawsuit, brought under a federal anti-terrorism law, accuses North Korea of holding their son, Otto Warmbier, hostage to pressure the US to end sanctions and allow Kim's regime to continue its weapons proliferation. If you don't recall this story, Otto Warmbier was arrested in early 2016 after allegedly trying to steal a poster while on a group sightseeing tour in North Korea. He was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor, which I would describe as too much. That seems a little bit out of control. And it went in an even darker direction. The 22-year-old University of Virginia student died last June, just 6 days after he was evacuated from North Korea. Doctors said that he was returned to our country with severe brain damage and was unresponsive. He was effectively on the brink of death when they finally returned him and died shortly thereafter.
I mean,
and now they're suing.
Horrific. Blind, deaf. I think I saw something that his parents were saying his teeth looked like they'd been pulled out and rearranged. And
torture.
Absolutely.
What is clearly torture.
Yeah.
I know some people who spent some time in North Korea as captives,
Yeah.
and it's not pretty.
But we know this going into it, which is what's so upsetting. But I mean, I was obsessed with this story when it all started happening. So then I started doing research into the tour group that he went with and just why anyone would and what and all of the drinking involved and this and that. None of it makes it okay. It's just it wasn't surprising, unfortunately, that this is how it ended.
Yeah, I don't even know why those things are going on in that way. At least at this point, maybe we're moving towards a place where we can do those sorts of things. But
people who would go on delegations to that, I know a guy who's a photographer who's been in a group where they're like, "Would you like to come photograph North Korea?" I've heard reports of people who have done that, and they frequently, when they recount their stories, are obviously trying to toe the line between reporting accurately on what happened, but also trying to get invited back again. So that's the difficult, line to walk.
Yeah.
But there's a great book I was talking about you. It's called The Orphan Master's Son. It's about someone who went on one of these. It's written by someone who went on those delegations, came back and wrote a novel based on the experiences that really, in a way that is fictionalized in line with how weird and fictitious the experience in North Korea actually feels, crafts a compelling narrative to kind of communicate, if not the exact things that are happening there, but the truths. And they all draw on real events that have happened in North Korea. Like Kim Jong-un saying, "I like that Japanese opera star. We're gonna send," or Kim Jong-il, "I like that Japanese opera star. Go kidnap her and bring her back." And that just happens. There's kidnappings all the time. People sneaking in from North Korea into South Korea, doing kidnappings, doing weird stuff, stealing things, smuggling it back. A lot of the economy is based on like counterfeit and graft.
Yeah.
It's weird, but
this
story, it's an amazing book. This story is one of what are we saying to the people who have been through? You were talking about this with me this morning about like what message does it send that we are essentially looking for peace? What do we say to these people who are Americans who have gone through these terrible experiences, and to people who have been through the worst during this?
What about the three who are still there?
Yeah, are we appeasing North Korea? What did you think?
Look, it's difficult because obviously, as many people have noted, you don't make peace with your friends. You make peace only with your enemies. It's the only person you can. And obviously, in every conflict, there's going to be terrible stuff. And in some cases, they've set up truth and reconciliation committees and things like that, but not gone forward on prosecuting clear war crimes and things of that sort. I mean, it could be that that's necessary to get North Korea to join the rest of us right now. But I will say this, I want peace there, but peace is not the absence of nuclear weapons. Peace isn't even the absence of artillery aimed at Seoul. Peace is the people of North Korea not being brutalized and enslaved and raped and tortured and murdered and all of that by their leadership. I honestly don't know. That's why I'm not in charge of, I don't know. And I don't know if that's something that can happen now or if that's something that has to happen over the course of decades. But I know that if what comes out of this is they actually denuclearize, which I don't even know if I can expect that, so that would be something, and maybe they pull some of their forces away from the border, that would be great. But if that then allows Kim Jong-un and his sons or whatever to rule for another 100 years, and the people of North Korea are in the same state that they are
Exactly.
now. How is that peace in any meaning of the word?
It's like the biggest criticism, what's angering people when they see him smiling and kind of being cheered on. No, look what he did, and they're holding hands and they're crossing the border, and his sister, and she's being celebrated at the Olympics, and she's our new shade queen. Like that's what's forgotten, I think, in this conversation.
It's those weird moments like at the Olympics when they realized in the North Korean cheering delegation that the camera was on them. They just went from like this to, doing their choreographed.
That's probably all cheerleaders, though.
Numbers.
Yeah, but I'm trying to be realistic. Obviously, you can't just sketch out your fantasy for what's going to happen and expect that it's going to happen. He's not going to step down. He's not going to die tomorrow. And I do think that he desperately wants to be a world leader that gets to. He's basically Trump. He wants to go to parties and have people talk nice to him and say nice things about him. And maybe with enough oversight and enough work, we can get international human rights observers and things like that to go in. Obviously, there's gonna have to be access if we're to believe anything they say about denuclearization. As of right now, they would never allow that, so that would be a big step too. But we need to have people going in and ensuring that these sorts of human rights abuses aren't happening anymore. He might well have to still be the leader, but he can't rule in the way that he has.
But that has to be a priority. I think that's basically what you're saying, and it's kind of being left out, it seems, so far.
There's a lot of
well, we're still in the very early stages.
Right, there's a lot of positive optics that come out of peace, but there's a lot of strategic things that these major players do not want to give up. China wants a geographical buffer between them and the American bases in South Korea. China wants us to get rid of our bases, we have 3 military bases at least in South Korea, which gives us like a strategic foothold in the East China Sea so that we're a presence there. Of course, China wants us out. Of course, we don't want to leave.
And maybe that's a part of it.
Go plant a tree. We'll see how these negotiations go. But in the same way that it's pretty easy to declare a symbolic victory, granted, no one has done it before by going and planting trees, we are still, as you say, like a very far way from seeing peace here.
What actually matters.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the most practical short-range goal is for China to say, all right, here's what you do. You have some kind of semblance of capitalism, but still here's how to maintain dictatorial control over your people by doing what we do in China, but still being able to be reputable the world over. Like that's it. And we're gonna get China maybe a little China heavy. If China has become China light, we're getting China heavy. I think that's the practical next step, and that's all we can really hope for. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
It's possible Trump will go back to the other Haley Mills in this Parent Trap and just be like, he's a rocket man.
You just watched the video by the Young Turks, the home of the revolution. If you'd like to get the full show, come join us and become a member. TYTnetwork.com/join.